It is Military and Law Enforcement Appreciation Day. Join us in honoring all military, law enforcement, and emergency management professionals for making our world a safer place. There's going to be an exciting announcement during the keynote related to the AFWERX Challenge. Stop by the booth for more details.
All right, good morning, everybody. I appreciate y'all having me here. I love the fact I get to follow General Spacey. Like he mentioned in the last part of his speech was he's known me and I've known him for pretty much our whole lives. In honesty, both of our fathers flew in Strategic Air Command, and he and I were actually classmates when we were in basically second or third grade. And we grew up in basically military family, Air Force families, joined the service together, and we've been together literally for those 30 years. So it's an honor to actually follow him and listen to his great words. I would also say, fighting across the globe in my 30 years as an Air Force airman, Brad has been the foundation of which allows our service to do what we do across the globe. As a force defender, he amazingly kept us secure, but then as he grew into his current position, he sets the foundation and the basis for everything that my warfighters and our Air Force warfighters are allowed to do. So that's an honor for me to actually follow him. I'd also like to thank the Military Liaison Council for ASIS, the scholarships that they offer for our people in order to continue education, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that education today. So, like Brad mentioned, we have been fighting for the last 30 years. The example would be that I've traveled so much in my time, especially in the last probably 10 years, that I have a teenage daughter now, and my daughter came to me and she said, "Hey, Daddy, I very rarely see you. You're always gone. I think you love the Air Force more than you love me." That was kind of a hard pill to swallow, but I looked at her and I said, "Sweetie, that may be true. I may love the Air Force more than you, but I love you more than the Army, okay?" So, I only make that joke because we are a joint fighting force, and we do fight together. And our Air Force tends to sector us off as purely in the Air Force culture over to the joint culture. I was early selected over to the joint culture, so half of my time in the service has been spent with my joint partners, my Army, my Navy, my Marines, and my Coast Guard for that matter. And along that way, we've all been busy. Your Department of Defense has been busy. You've been busy. What you do is a busy day schedule. But as a 30-year combat veteran, your DOD has been busy also. And if I could allow to have a little bit of parochialness towards the Air Force, I would say your Air Force specifically, above other services, has never not been busy. From the time that I entered the Air Force in 1989, I graduated from the Air Force Academy, the Gulf War I started in 1990. 6 months after graduation from the Air Force Academy, I was involved in the first Gulf War. I have since been deployed 8 times over my career, about every 2 years, and I have done nothing but constant combat, just like the rest of my service, for 30 straight years. And I like to draw the delineation because some of our sister services will come in and bring the bulk of the force. For example, when Gulf War I started, certainly the Army came in full force. All hands on deck Navy, full force Army, went into battle. And they worked the first part of that Gulf War very hard to a success. And then they retreated back into their garrisons. But the United States Air Force did not. If you recall, we were the first ones in to develop the intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, support the forces while they were on the ground, and then when the ground forces left and the Navy forces returned to port, your United States Air Force stayed there to do what was called monitoring. And we monitored them the entire time to make sure that they adhered to the policies that we put in place. We never came home. And then Gulf War II started. Army and Navy spun up, they came in, we supported them, we gave them the pre-fight intelligence to fight, we supported them on the ground. They did an excellent job, as a joint force does, and they returned back to their garrisons and to their ports. Once again, your United States Air Force did not come home. We stayed in the monitoring status. full force. And that trend has continued for over 30 years. And that seems like a good story, except for when you start thinking about how much wear and tear that takes on a force. But more importantly, I'd ask you to think about what historically America has done during what we call the interwar years. From World War I, that ended roughly in the 1918s, to World War II, there was 20 years, an interwar period. Between World War II and Korea, another 10 years. Korea-Vietnam, about 5 years, and then between Vietnam and the start of Gulf War, another 20 years. Those are called interwar periods. Historically, what your United States military does is 3 things during those times. First and foremost, we retrofit and basically rest and repair. We take our humans back and we take a downtime, think about what we've done. The second important thing we do is we educate. We send our officers and our enlisted to schools, to universities. We send them out to educate and learn, take that time to think about what has happened, maybe apply that to the future. But we give them an opportunity to have a strong educational foundation. We basically flood the universities with our soldiers, sailors, and airmen. And then 3, the final thing, is we take the education and we think about how the next conflict may occur. Rest and recuperate, educate, and then reconfigure for the next conflict. Well, that's great if you have the time between the years. And in 30 years as an airman, we have not had that time of the interwar period. Constant combat and constant chaos. We're constantly fighting there. And that's come with a downfall. That downfall is we don't have the time to have that interwar thought process, educate, or reconfigure. It's compressed. So our current Secretary of the Air Force, Secretary Wilson, and our current Chief of Staff has dedicated their time and leadership to giving us the opportunity to have time, educate, and reconfigure. And when you put time, education, and requirements to reconfigure together, you get innovation. So they have sponsored through their culture push through the Air Force this period of time to allow us to begin innovation. Like I said, I returned back about a year and a half ago from conflict in the Middle East, and I was immediately put in the Pentagon and asked to look at how the Air Force could begin its innovative cultural transition. Truth be told, your Air Force, along with all of your services, have been always innovative. We just haven't had the time in the last 30 years. So I began to search around and look at different ways that we could do it. I went to universities, I went to large corporations. I started looking at other services and how they did that. And I found out a couple interesting facts. First and foremost, through a study we sponsored, about 85% of the American population, small business, professors, students, tinkerers, have no idea how to bring their ideas into the Department of Defense. 85% of untapped intellectual capital that are bringing great ideas forward can't find a way in because they don't understand how to get into the DoD, or it's too formidable, it's too big, or more importantly, it's too bureaucratic. I don't want to get involved in that 5,000 series regulations because that is very complicated, and first and foremost, it takes time. So time, misunderstanding, and I can't even get on the base to bring my idea in because of the force protection requirements. So I did some work with a good friend of mine named Hondo Gertz in the AFWERX program. He's in charge of the special operations kind of planning and programming. I went to visit him down in Tampa Air Force Base in MacDill, Florida. And what he developed was kind of this off-site facility under the AFWERX construct where anybody can walk into a building, this building that he's developed, and see kind of the challenges that special operators have. It presents all the problems, it presents kind of some ideas, and it kind of gives the idea, it kind of gives a space where people can come in and go, hey, I've got an idea. And that's in AFWERX in Tampa. And I got to working with Hondo, and I said, Hondo, this is a great idea. And we're a team, we're a joint team. So he said, Guns, I'll work with you to develop the Air Force's AFWERX program, the AFWERX program. I said, that's great, but we are kind of both warfighters. I said, Hondo, here's how it's gonna work. I'm gonna take the best of what you do, AFWERX, and I'm gonna build AFWERX, and I'm gonna crush your industry. Because although people like to watch Oh Dark 30, they like Star Wars movies better. And so he's like, you're on. The competition began. I looked at how they did processes, I looked at how they did their cultural inputs, I looked at how they engaged with the community, I looked at how they opened up to universities and small business entrepreneurs and tinkerers, and he told a story. I think this story wraps up kind of exactly what happened. So one day they were sitting in their AFWERX facility, and a gentleman came in overalls and kind of a flannel shirt. And he's walking around looking at the pictures on the walls of what our special operations do. And he kind of stands there and he says, huh. He says, can I talk to one of your guys? And they're all there and they're closed. And they're like, sure, it's a talking in an open idea exchange area. He says, I'm a pig farmer. I live up near the Everglades by myself. I kind of dabble in basically, different chemicals and whatnots for building different kind of hunter things. I love to hunt. I'm a huge bow hunter, as a matter of fact, and I like to hunt wild boar. And he goes, okay, that's interesting. He goes, but the thing is, what you don't know about wild boar is, A, they're super dangerous, B, they got really good noses. So hunting boar is challenging enough if you got a weapon, but you're doing it with a bow and arrow, you've got to get close enough. He says, typically what would happen, I would bring my dogs out, they're very good hunters with me, I would go out at night, I'd look for the boar, I would just get in range where I could draw my bow back, the boar would smell me and take off. It's one of the most frustrating hunts I've ever done. So I went home and I was dabbling away with some of the plants and stuff I deal with, and I said, if I could only get closer to that boar. So I mixed some chemicals together, and I kind of came up with a spray, and I wanted to see how it worked. So I planned the next hunt the next night. Before I went out, I sprayed myself with this aerosol spray. Went out with my dogs, walked forward, got right up to the edge of where I could get the bow string back, looked at the boar, he smelled me and took off. I'm like, well, that didn't work. But something else happened. His hunting dogs walked away from him. He's like, wait, hey boys, hey Fido, where are you going? And the dogs could not find his way back to him. He thought that was interesting. So he took the dogs back home, got them all riled up, put them in the cage, waited a couple hours till midnight, sprayed himself up again, went out to his kennels, completely covered in the spray, walked into his kennels, where his dogs were absolutely alert on anything, walked into the kennels while the dogs were sleeping, and not a dog woke up. The dogs couldn't smell him. So they didn't work on the boar, but it worked on dogs. So he goes, would you guys have a use for this? And the special operators are like, because one of the biggest things that hurts special operators is early recognition that they're nearby. And that comes from all different mechanisms. But sometimes it comes from dogs. They're walking through the desert, wild dogs smell them, they bark. They walk up on an objective, the dogs are around, they bark. We've lost about 3 special operators in that last 100-yard dash because they were early alerted by dogs. And they looked at this farmer and they said, oh my God, how much do you want for that? He goes, I'm an American. You guys can have the chemicals. Here's yours. All because this great innovator, this garage tinkerer, this farmer, had an idea. And he brought it to special operations to save lives. That's the innovative culture we're trying to tap into. That 85%, that small business, that one that goes through. So that's where we're focused on. That's the part we're focused on, getting our folks involved in being innovative across the spectrum. Because not only inside of our service we have people that can do the sort of innovation we need. They know their business, they know how to work on stealth aircraft, they know how to work on security systems, they know how to work on how to take care of what they do. They have a mechanism inside our military force, but what we don't have is a mechanism for you all. And that's where our secretary and our chief are focused. We're going to tap into that AFWERX culture. We have built the beginning of 5 sites. The first site was chosen here in Las Vegas, not because it's Las Vegas, it's because it's connected to one of the largest operational testing, advanced techniques and procedures facilities that our military has, and that's at Nellis Air Force Base. We have a habitual connection. The facility is downtown. It's easily accessible and walkable for anybody here to the convention center. It brings in a lot of folks, and they run a series of opportunities and sprints, they're called, to let people bring in those ideas. But you don't have to have a sprint to bring an idea in. You can just walk in and look at it. It's open through regular business hours, and there you can see the transition of the challenges that we have as an Air Force specifically, that maybe you all have the ideas for. And then once that idea is basically brought to the attention and it has value, we bring in some of our experts from the Nellis complex, they evaluate the idea, and then boom, we go to fast acquisition. We bypass some of the hurdles that we're typically faced with a larger acquisition. And that's the power of the AFWERX, and that's exactly what our secretary and our chief of staff are driving us to. The second facility we have is already opened up. It's down in San Antonio. We have a lot of computer and intellectual property we're going to tap into there. Our third facility will possibly be Boston, MIT, near the universities, and our fourth facility may be in Colorado Springs as we emerge into the space realm. So that's where we're going as a military. I tell you what, can you bring up the next slide? Our job in the Department of Defense is to ensure that we, as a nation, see us for who we really are. My daughter, the one that asked me a question about why I'm gone so much, sent me this photo about a month ago. And she said, "Hey, Daddy, I found this photo. I think it's interesting. I love the American eagle." She says, "But what do you think the eagle's looking at?" And I said, "Sweetie, that's a great question. But more importantly, I asked her, what do you think the eagle sees? And does the eagle see what the eagle thinks he or she is?" The job of your United States military is to ensure that what the eagle sees is exactly who he is. We can't fake it anymore. You can't be a pigeon looking in a reflection of yourself and see an eagle. We have to be the dominant force. We have to be the smart, the agile, the innovative. The power that we are has to be true. And our job as the Department of Defense is to ensure that we see ourselves for who we are. And we see ourselves as strong, as agile, as intelligent as that. Along that lines, we're starting to do our next event. Next slide, please. Our next AFWERX challenge is going to be the AFWERX Challenge, the Advanced Microelectronics Autonomous Challenge. The great part about that challenge, we're launching this challenge in a cooperation with Air Force Research Labs, AFRL, along with our AFWERX partnership. It's an open idea submission. This is part of a $2 billion with a B dollar investment that your government's making. This particular challenge is over $1 million, has already been committed to this production. And the goal is we're seeking rapid increases in capability to provide a level of assurance in this operational environment. Bottom line, smaller, faster, more secure microelectronics to power our future. I hope you all take the opportunity to come in and look at this, bring your ideas, spread the word, and bring your ideas to the challenge, because this is what we're about. Thank you very much.